Just frame for us the expectations for today's conversation.
Well, the expectation today is to have a great conversation about the opportunity to continue President Trump's agenda, which his agenda, of course, has been always about the safety and security, national security of our country. That begins with you can't have national security without border security. You can't have national security without energy security. So that's going to be on the table. And, of course, the prosperity of America. That's based on energy as well, because if without a plentiful, abundant, reliable, secure energy, you're going to have the inflation like we saw in the previous administration. President Trump is turning that around. So this is really at the core, it's a discussion about peace in the world and prosperity at home. And what an opportunity, economic opportunity to restore normal relations with Venezuela. And for companies, including many of these that had operations in Venezuela for decades ago, when Venezuela was a big economic partner to the United States before its collapse, get a chance to return to that. So looking forward to it. It's an exciting day and lots of interest in coming to the meeting today. There are not enough seats in the room in terms of executives that wanted to join in the meeting today with President Trump.
Secretary Burgum, I know that you and Secretary Ryder have that outreach with the oil industry right now, but what I'm hearing is that they are certainly lining up for a meeting with the president, but they're not necessarily lining up to go back into Venezuela. What are they telling you?
Well, I think the very strong interest. How can you not be interested in the world's largest oil reserves in the same hemisphere? So I think there's questions, of course, questions about security, questions about what the long-term profile is going to be, but the interest level is through the roof across from the small wildcatter to upstream, midstream, downstream, the majors. There's so much interest in this, and not just in energy. People are reaching out because the mining industry collapsed in Venezuela. Their entire electrical generation industry has collapsed. The opportunity with sanctions being selectively listed for the U.S. companies to sell into that market as it rebuilds is very interesting. And of course, we've got a number of energy companies that have spent their careers going into some of the world's dangerous places to develop oil resources. And those folks, some of those will be in the room today as well.
But it's going to take tens of billions of dollars for them to allocate capital to go back into Venezuela. Does the math make sense when WTI is trading below $60 a barrel?
Well, the market is going to decide, but I know that one thing that happened this week, people keep saying, oh, below 60, there's going to be no interest. Through the Department of Interior, we're holding our, as required, legal lease sales. The one that we held in New Mexico earlier this week on January 6th, $327 million of royalty payments and a record, the highest since these leases have begun under the new format. Almost 40 years, 39 years ago, in 1987 was when the new rules came in place. It was $219,000 per acre on one of the leases in Permian. So I would say the interest, U.S. And in Venezuela, very strong in this industry because they see they look ahead and they see the demand for energy going up. And of course, driven by economic growth, 2026 could be a banner year, but also the energy required for us to win the AI arms race. So there's a strong, strong interest in this investing in this Western Hemisphere.
Does the administration have a goal of getting oil to $50 a barrel?
Well, I think what President Trump wants is he wants to break the back of inflation, and he knows that there's a component of energy in the food you eat, the clothes you wear, the car you drive. If you can get energy prices down, that's the best way to lick inflation, and affordability is something that matters. President Trump has stopped the runaway inflation, the prior administration. He wants to keep it going. When we talk about how do we get prices down, part of it is we've cut so much red tape in the last year. We've lowered the break-even point. That plus the technological innovation from this industry. The oil and gas industry is not what it was 50 years ago. This is a super high-tech industry. You take a look at my home state of North Dakota and you look at the capability and the productivity increases of the people developing there. It's just been amazing, the gains that they continue to make. And again, the shale revolution tied with deregulation, cutting some of the red tape that was put in place. We know that their break-even point is getting lower and lower, and that's why it makes it a great industry, and that's why we've got the greatest industry in the country or in the world, because in the U.S. we've got competition. We don't have a nationalized oil industry that's become a monopoly and lethargic. We've got great companies that get out and compete. We're going to be with some of those great companies today, and excited to hear their ideas about how to go in and break free the incredible opportunity that is for both the U.S. and Venezuela in developing this resource.
Mr. Secretary, a lot to unpack there, including about the shale patch. I do want to stay on this question of U.S. backing of some of these U.S. companies going into Venezuela and building out the infrastructure there. President Trump has talked about potentially a $100 billion investment, potentially over the next 18 months. Where would the funds come from in the United States for some of these energy companies to help back those investments?
Well, the discussions right now have been that the capital is going to come from the capital markets and come from the energy companies. I don't see that these companies are going to need support from the U.S. other than things around security. I mean, if we can provide a secure, stable environment, the resource here is so significant and so large that it's going to be attractive for people to go in and develop that. And particularly as the U.S. maintains the embargo, this is key. You reported on it just now. President Trump, serious. I mean, sanctions under President Trump actually mean a sanction. The failed sanctions under the Biden administration just turned Venezuela and other places into the discount gas stations for China and other countries. And President Trump is, we're going to make sure that this is secure, and we're controlling the flow both of energy going in and energy coming out. Venezuela's heavy crude requires diluent. It requires a light crude like we've got in the United States to go down there. One barrel's got to go into Venezuela for every 5 barrels that comes out. Russia controlled that market. That market's coming back to the U.S. And the synergy between our refinery sector in the United States, which was built around Venezuelan oil, getting back to that's great news for refiners, great news for gas prices for Americans, great news for the opportunity to sell modern equipment to modernize this industry. So lots of news for beyond even the oil majors. Lots of great news economically as we open up this trading and normalized trading relationship with Venezuela.
Yeah, certainly Valero, as a refiner, has seen the benefits of this. Mr. Secretary, you talk about security guarantees, and if the safety is there, the oil majors will go in with, frankly, capital markets behind them. What kind of security guarantees are they asking for?
Well, we'll find out some of that more today, but I think what they really want to understand is, how serious is the U.S. in maintaining the embargo? How serious is the U.S. in maintaining stability in Venezuela? And I think the actions that they're seeing this week speak loudly to that. The actions of President Trump enforcing the embargo and already the cooperation. I mean, earlier this morning, President Trump, just in the last half hour, tweeted out that the Venezuelan interim government is releasing political prisoners. They're taking actions to demonstrate that they want to have a successful economic relationship with the United States of America. The interim government's committed that they're going to be buying equipment and material from the U.S. companies. I mean, these are all the signals that we're looking for to keep us moving towards normalized relationships.
Mr. Secretary, as you know, to establish stability in this region, it might require massive expense from the U.S. government, which might require a lot of money from taxpayers. If these oil majors go in with the support of the U.S. government, Mr. Secretary, will the president want a slice of that revenue for the U.S. government?
Well, I think President Trump is always looking for good deals for the American people, but he also is a business person. He understands that we have to have the right economic conditions for companies to go in and deploy their own capital and solve these problems. So I think in the end, what we're going to see is we're so fortunate to have a president who has got the willingness and the courage and the understanding of how to use force, just like past presidents did. I mean, we wouldn't have the Panama Canal without bold action by Theodore Roosevelt 125 years ago. And now under President Trump, again, taking a corollary of the Monroe Doctrine, which is saying, hey, if we've got criminal enterprises running countries and destroying countries in our hemisphere, that's bad for the neighborhood. Let's go in and clean it up. and do that. But when it comes to rebuilding, I think, again, what we've seen is that if we can create the right market conditions, we're not going to need taxpayer dollars to go do this. And who's going to benefit? The taxpayers, because they're going to see lower prices at the pump here in America.
The reason I bring up this question, sir, is because, as you know, there was some conversation about chips being sold into China and the government getting a share of the revenue associated with those chips. And I wonder if the same kind of thing applies here, because I think the executives going into this meeting later are trying to figure out what kind of meeting they're going into. Is it an opportunity to explore Venezuela by themselves or alongside the US government? And what kind of agreement could be established further down the road?
Well, I think initially it's going to be alongside the U.S. government because, as has been stated publicly this week, the U.S. intends to control the disposition of the oil coming out of Venezuela. And as I said earlier, that it's going to control whatever material and supplies, and in this case, the millions of barrels of diluent that need to go in to extract this heavy Venezuelan crude. That is going to be controlled by the U.S. During this period in cooperation with the interim government in Venezuela. So I think that they can hear more about that firsthand today, but it's going to match what they've heard publicly this week. And I know from talking to a number of these executives this week, Chris Wright has talked to a number of these executives this week, there is a lot of interest in getting back into the world's largest proven reserves right here in our hemisphere. And again, that's a great benefit to the entire Western Hemisphere, but absolutely it's a benefit to the American citizens.